What if you had the smartest Wi-Fi? If you did, it'd be Xfinity and it'd come with their best state-of-the-art equipment. It would boost speeds to the devices that needed them most, whether you were streaming, gaming, or gaming while pretending to work. It would even power your mobile connection so you could bring faster, secure Wi-Fi speeds with you where you use it most. If you had the smartest Wi-Fi, everything would work together seamlessly to keep you connected. Xfinity. Imagine that. Restrictions apply.
Hello and welcome to another edition of the Jayhawker Podcast. My name is Nate Bukaty. We got a special Border Showdown edition in advance of the Jayhawks taking on the Missouri Tigers in Kansas City. As always, we are brought to you by Xfinity. Get the smartest Wi-Fi only from Xfinity. Imagine that. And also by the University of Kansas Health Systems. And I've got two special guests on the show with me today. Some of you know him because of his amazing work on the Jayhawk Radio Network as the analyst for Kansas basketball, or you just see him shaking hands with every important person in the building at Allen Fieldhouse on a match day. His name is Greg Gurley. What's up, Greg? How are you, man?
Hey, buddy. Doing good. That's quite an intro. A lot of shaking babies and kissing hands at games. You called it you let your soccer take over. You said on a match day.
Wow, boy, I told on myself, didn't I? Yeah. Right before the big draw comes out. On a game day at Allen Fieldhouse.
Or Allen Fieldhouse, the pitch, as they sometimes they like to call it.
Yeah. Fixtures, a big fixture coming up for the Jayhawks against Missouri. And the other voice you heard there is a guy that I was in college at the same time. We didn't cross paths, I don't think, a whole lot. He was running in different circles than I was. Ryan Robertson, big-time Kansas Jayhawk, of course, his time in the 90s, and a Missouri native who came across the border to play at Kansas, so we thought it would be great to talk to him as well. Ryan, how are you, man?
Hi, Nate. Great to be on, and right here in the heart of Missouri, or not in the heart, but St. Louis, home still to this day. So brings back a lot of fond memories, those Missouri-Kansas games.
All right, so we're going to get into that. We're going to get into the memories that you have and Greg has. We're going to talk about this matchup coming up, and now that the rivalry is back and in full effect. But I want to kind of bring it back to the two of you, because I've already heard some of Greg's versions of this. He claims a lot of credit for convincing you to come to the University of Kansas as a guy that really took over your recruiting process. Is there any truth to that whatsoever? What do you remember about like your first interactions with Greg Gurley when you were a young high school kid?
So I can tell you unequivocally 100% that is true.
Wow.
Wow. Coach Williams at the time would let, I guess, Jared Haas at the time, would he have been a junior? Something like that. He didn't really let the seniors do it because his view is by the time whoever they were recruiting, the seniors would be gone. So Greg was, basically going to be a senior when I was being recruited. And so, he wasn't going to have Greg be my host. And so Jared Haas, who I love and was a great teammate and a great KU Jayhawk and has done great things in basketball, was my host. And night one, I got in on Friday night and we had dinner with the team, I think, and had a great time. And Jared took me to a really nice movie. I think it was like Sandra Bullock, Hope Floats or something. And we had a really nice time and a very quiet evening. And then he took me back to the hotel and we had a night, I got a really nice long sleep at the hotel. I think it was a Holiday Inn. And then the next day we went to the football game, had a great day. And I think during the course of the football game, Greg said, "Hey, how was last night?" And I said, "Well, I went and saw a movie." And he goes, "Well, tonight we're going to the Wheel." And I said, "Greg," and the rules have changed a lot. Okay. So before our friends at the Wheel, call the cops, like the rules have changed. Like it's very strict to get in there now. But back in the day, I was 18, 17. And Greg said, "Well, we can make something happen." And we went to the Wheel, and I had the time of my life. And I did not go to bed at 9:00 that night. It was much, much later, and had a terrific host in Greg Gurley. And we did a lot of shaking hands and kissing babies that night, and had a ball. And the next thing you know, I'm a Kansas Jayhawk.
Greg, does this all jive with your memories?
Oh yeah. That's where recruiting trips. You want to give them both sides of it. I did not know the movie was Hope Floats, which makes it even It's of all the movies. Okay, whatever.
It's one of Greg's favorites.
I hope that's not true, but that seems like more of a date movie. But okay,
I think if you look up Hope Floats, I'm sure it wasn't in the late '90s, so I probably made that up. But anyways, go on. Go ahead, Greg.
So I said, you know what, and it wasn't like, this isn't an indictment on Jared. It was just like, he needs to see both sides of Lawrence, what to expect, and I was fairly well established amongst the scene in Lawrence, and
you still are quite established.
He can still get you into the wheel, by the way. Yeah. If you need
there's no such thing as lines. Lines are for tourists, and we made our way in and had a nice couple bar stools and got to meet some college kids, and Ryan really felt at home and knew that was the place that he wanted to spend 4 years, and probably the greatest decision of his life.
One of top 2 or 3, honestly.
Marriage, kids, all that.
Yeah,
but yes.
Yeah, but
fair.
I'm not kidding. Right there, for sure.
But it's always, we were just talking before we got on, and it was such a massive deal that a St. Louis Ryan Robertson decided to go to Kansas, even though there's some guys that have done it. Malcolm Nash and Sean Tunstall were Vashon guys that came to Lawrence, but no. That didn't seem to bother anybody, but for some reason, the sky was falling in the state of Missouri when Ryan Robertson picked Kansas. Pat Ritchie did it from Lee Summit to Kansas, but again, Ryan kind of broke the internet, the non-existent internet at the time.
Right.
And
the dial-up. You had to dial up at that time.
Yeah, I think I had an email account right at about that time.
Yeah,
which was always, there wasn't a massive amount of St. Louis kids going to Missouri, but for some reason, really mad at Ryan Robertson. And we'll get into that later about some of it carried on for 4 years and more, quite honestly, probably 35 years, right, Ryan? Are they still mad?
Yeah, I don't think they're still mad because you know why? I think the people that were mad at the time are now old like we are. And they're like, you know what was I thinking? And the kids that are there now weren't born. They my daughter, as you know, and Nate, if you don't know, my daughter is a junior at Kansas, having the time of her life. She works in the basketball office. So she wasn't born when I played at Kansas, clearly. So none of the students at Mizzou now wouldn't have any idea who I am. And I was saying this before to Greg, and Greg and I have laughed about this in the past. Like, all right, fine. Greg was you don't go to Kansas without being a relatively highly recruited player, and Greg and all the guys he just mentioned were highly recruited, and I guess I was highly recruited, but I didn't deserve to be booed that much is what I'm trying to say. Like, I wasn't that good. Like, if I was Paul Pierce, who I played with and was a teammate, all right, fine, I get it. He's an NBA Hall of Famer, but I just was a good college player. But that is what it is, and it was at the time sort of surprising and flattering, all wrapped up into one big bow.
Okay, I should have done my research better on this, so I'm going off memory here. But weren't you in the same McDonald's All-American class with Paul?
Yeah. Paul and I were teammates, and roommates.
So that's, I think, to try to give perspective to those of our audience that maybe are too young to really remember the dynamic at that time.
Yeah.
It was a big deal that you were coming to Kansas. I mean, you were a McDonald's All-American. You were a very highly touted player. And so and look, you were obviously a very good college basketball player too. Next to Paul Pierce, there's not many guys that could stand up to that.
And let me interrupt. And McDonald's All-American, there's McDonald's All-American, like the top 30, and then there's honorable mention. He was not an honorable mention. He was in the game. Yeah. And a lot of people claim they were McDonald's All-American. They were second team All-State in Idaho. And, he was, along with Paul Pierce and
Vince Carter and Chauncey Billups and Kevin Garnett and Stephon Marbury and a lot of really
decent class,
really
good
class. And it's obviously before the internet and before all the social media and stuff. So it was you read about it in publications, you had to get it was in the newspaper, obviously, but back then that was a massive deal. So I just wanted to make sure that listeners understand how good this cat was.
And also the context of the rivalry. I mean, the biggest, I'm just thinking from memory, Ryan, the biggest game that I remember during your time at Kansas, between Kansas and Missouri, sadly for KU, was a loss. But it was that overtime game in the perfect season that you guys would have had otherwise in 1997.
Yep.
And they were a 500-ish team, if I remember correctly. They were not a great team that year, but it was a rivalry. And that, I mean, to me, it underscored what the rivalry was really all about. And I'm curious, like, when you think back to that game, to the games that you played in, for those that don't know, what was it like for you being the guy from Missouri that was going into enemy territory?
Well, listen, I tell people this all the time, and you know, I have honest conversations with all of my Missouri friends. Missouri was at the time, like, and again, we're talking about the late 90s here. So, you know, but, you know, they were a 500 team for 3 or 4 years and didn't really do much. But one game out of the year for 3 of the 4 years I was there, they played like a top 5 team in the country. And that's what a rivalry is. That I know it sounds so cliche, you could throw the records out or the rankings out, but that's what Mizzou does and did. So my freshman year, we were really good. We were a number 1 seed. We were number 1 at some point in the season. Obviously, my sophomore year, 97, we were by far the best team all year long. In fact, we were number 1 going into that game against Missouri. We lost. And when the rankings came out again, we were still number 1, just to show you how dominant we were that year. And then my junior year, we were great. Had NBA first rounders, including Rafe LaFrentz and Paul Pierce, and we lost. So my freshman, sophomore, and junior year, we lost and we were number 1 in the country at some point. And I just say that because that's how good Mizzou was and how much they got up for that game. And by the way, like, we lost, and there were times where I'm not sure, it wasn't like we played poorly. It wasn't like we were bad. We were actually pretty good in those games. It's just Missouri was great, and that's what a rivalry game does.
It's funny that you said all that because my role in it, which was not important at all, but I was a nerd broadcaster, you know, and I got to do some games. Greg, past tense.
I was about to say was.
I caught myself with that. I was like, is. But I got to do, it was a big deal when you worked at the campus radio station. You get to call a men's basketball game at Allen Fieldhouse. We sat way down in the corner, but you got to sit on the floor, and you got to call a game for the campus radio station. And I got to do the game against Missouri when Rafe had that one-handed putback, you know, flying down the lane. And I still have a cassette tape somewhere of me describing that game. And I do.
Was it a pass or a rebound?
If I remember correctly, it was a rebound. I think it was a putback.
He had 2 famous Missouri ones. He had the putback off the back iron, and then he had a pass, and it just happens that the pass was from me. So, and the only reason why I remember that is because Coach Williams used to hate when I used to throw feed of center coming down the middle, because he always felt like somebody would slide in and take a charge, and a lot of times that happened. But in this instance, I ended up pitching it back to Rafe, and he had kind of one of his sort of standout moments in Kansas where he had this amazing dunk against Mizzou. And actually, I'd have to even go back and look, not that I want to. It might those 2 dunks might have even happened in the same game. Anyways, I digress.
Yeah, mine was I just remember the putback. I remember listening to that, like that call. But in that moment, you see it sometimes. They play it on the videos. There's so many like iconic moments like that. And one of the other things I remember, I talked to Kevin Pritchard about this a long time ago. He told me that Norm Stewart would talk trash to you under his breath, at least to him, when he was inbounding the basketball. Like if you went to inbound the ball and you were right in front of the Missouri bench, he kind of give you a few little jabs. I see you nodding your head, Greg. Did you get some of that?
Oh, yeah, not necessarily to me, but, you know, because I didn't play very much. But and it really wasn't. You can lose the term under his breath. He would look right at you and say, and so. But that's what I mean. I love.
It was great.
Stewart. He was. You know, I say this all the time. Back in the 80s and 90s, there were characters because you could get away with stuff of saying, like, doing that. What Norm did was awesome. Billy Tubbs, Norm Stewart, Johnny Orr. I mean, you had guys that got a little crazy to them, and it was fun. Now everyone's so buttoned up and nervous about what to say, and if we saw a coach talk trash to a player, it would be on all the yelling shows the next morning.
I tell you what,
there'd be a fight. The other coach would come down, want to fight, and all this. And that's so true.
Like back then, it was just like you didn't have to talk like this. You could just be like, "Hey, my guy's gonna bust your ass," and there's nothing you can do. I mean, they would just talk shit.
Well, I tell you what, we had a coach like that at Allen Fieldhouse on Tuesday a little bit. Dan Hurley to me is a throwback, and I loved it. I think everybody in the building kind of loved it, even though you love to hate him, so to speak, because he's the other coach. But it was fun.
Funny story. You were kind of sitting over there. You were front row, and right behind you was Trent Green. And at one point, like with 2 minutes to go, Danny Hurley, I talked to Trent, and he turned around. He goes, "Hey, what the blank are you doing here?" Like in a 1-point game. And Trent was like, "Hey," and then they went over and talked afterwards. But like that doesn't happen as much. And love him or hate him, Danny Hurley is what he is. Can't argue with the resume. 2 national titles. You may not like the way he coaches, but he's a really good basketball coach.
But he would tell you, he would tell you that he's old school, though.
Yeah,
he would tell you that he is from the old school. He's like, if you want to come to UConn, you're not, and this shouldn't be a recruiting tape for UConn, but he will tell you, don't expect to be babied and coddled here. And that's the way old school coaches were. Norm Stewart
that's the way Bill recruits. Bill.
Yeah.
I mean,
right.
Ryan,
of course.
And guys want to be coached hard. Like we all think it's about money and you deal with this, that when it all comes down to it, kids still want to be driven and coached. And be honest with them. There's going to be some that, it's always the coach's fault. I don't want to listen to him. But, hey, coaches are paid to win. They're going to recruit players that help them win, and they're going to coach them to win. They're not just doing favors for somebody's dad. Their ass is on the line. And so if that's going to be the case, they're going to coach to win. And that may be that you don't play. Or you don't play the 34 minutes you think you're supposed to play. You might play 8, and you better figure out how to turn 8 into 12 and 12 into 16. And that's the hard part in today's environment to get over.
So real quick, Ryan, before we took the air, it seemed like we might have been able to switch you into coming to this game on Sunday, by the way. Is there a chance? Can we work this out? Get you to Kansas City?
When you have 3 kids, now one of them's in Kansas, like you lose track of when these games are and where they're at. And when you said to me it's Sunday in Kansas City, that's actually potentially doable. So you might see me on Sunday.
No, there's no might about it.
Yeah,
I've already texted. We got great tickets, and you need to paint your face and just be there.
Yeah.
Greg didn't offer me tickets, for the record, Ryan. Just you. Well,
you can go with Ryan. The kids get in free, I think.
Okay, I was going to say, what's the age cutoff or what's the size? I don't take up
more
as much
like
space.
Disney World. They got to be this tall to enter.
Yeah.
Nate, you don't have to take that.
This is our dynamic, Brian. It's my lot in life.
At some point, I'll make a fat joke. It'll be fine.
It is nice to see you fit in the triple screen. I was a little worried about that when we were going to have 2 guests on, but we did it. So I'm seeing there, Ryan, you've got the like professional microphone, headphones set up, and all that stuff. Tell people what you're up to these days, and what's you're a conditioned broadcaster?
No, I'm my job. You don't want to hear about my job. I have a real job. I used to have a fun thing where I played over in Europe, but then I got like this real job where I, have to, punch a clock, and I've got a computer and I got this fancy like headset because I have to do a podcast from time to time. But I say all that to say I actually really do love my job. I work in financial services. I have a great gig at a firm out of Philadelphia, but I get to live here in St. Louis. So I couldn't be happier. And my education from Kansas has paid off in a really big way.
Well, this is a fundraiser talking like, how much money do you think you make? And then how much would you be willing to give back to our program? You don't have to tell me, you can just ballpark it, but maybe off air we'll talk about, kind of getting involved. I mean, it's about time. You're doing too well.
Okay. We should have that chat.
Okay. What do you think of the team this year, Ryan? I mean, and I know it's been a couple of frustrating years, but so far this year, I think we haven't gotten to see Darren out there, but there seems to be a good engine in this team. The guys are fighting. What do you think when you see them right now?
I'm like all the KU fans. I'm a huge Kansas basketball fan, like you two, like everybody who watches the games. I don't care year to year who puts on the jersey. I just love rooting for them and watching them. We sound old because we were talking about newspapers a second ago and dial-up internet, and now we're going to talk about like the thing I miss, I think, the most about today's college basketball is watching a freshman go to become a sophomore, to become a junior, to become a senior. Like I sort of miss watching those guys grow up in front of us and watching them develop and getting coached. And that just doesn't happen today. So when you ask me about this year's team, I've had 7 or 8 games to sort of evaluate them because that's the first time I've really gotten to see all of them. And they look like really talented, good group of kids. And listen, I know when I say this, I'm as big of a Bill Self basketball coach fan in the world. Like, I think we should, I hope he coaches at Kansas for the next 1,000 years. So my view is that he's going to get them to where he needs to get them to for us to be really competitive, when it comes to March. But, I root like heck, like you both do. And like everybody who wears, crimson and blue does.
Well, Ryan, you're right on the development of it. This year we're going to retire 2 guys' jerseys, Devontae Graham and Frank Mason. And that will be the last time you ever see guys like Devontae Graham and Frank Mason as far as their development.
It's a great point. It's a great point.
Devontae signed at Appalachian State. Coach left, reopened his recruitment. We get him. Frank signed at Towson State. Now we play here in a couple of weeks. Coach left. He got out. I mean, that's 2 guys that weren't on the radar at all, meaning they also didn't play much as freshmen, and they evolved and they grew and they
got coached.
The National Player of the Year, Frank Mason, his senior year, and Devontae Graham was in the conversation. He was an All-American
and went to the Final Four. Went to the Final Four.
So you're right, and that's the world we're living in, and it's different. And we can be, we can either embrace it or we can complain about it. We can do both, but bottom line is, you kind of have to embrace it, and you got to figure out how to prosper. And that's what we're doing right now. Now, the one thing we haven't said is one of the best players in the country isn't playing. Yeah. We played a UConn team that could win a national title, and we scored 56 points. You can't tell me that an extremely gifted offensive player, you don't win that game by 10. That's hands, ifs, candy and nuts, all that stuff. I get it. But the good thing is we have that foundation, and Bill is so good at molding and managing egos and getting us through this difficult time. And it's tough. We're 6-3 in early December. Never happens. All our big games, with the exception of Tennessee, we've lost. When you look at Carolina, Duke, and now UConn, I get it. But I wouldn't want to be playing this team in January, February, and March after what we've learned about this team over the last 2 or 3 weeks. So everything's pointing up.
And again, that scenario for us is probably not unusual for like every other top program in the country. Like when you bring in 10 new people, 10 new players, like not everyone is going to be 8-0, 9-0, 10-0 to start. Like, I don't know, could we be as good as Duke today in January, February? Sure. I think absolutely. Like the new world has not allowed for us to know who the national champion or the Final Four teams are in November. It doesn't exist anymore.
We have one guy on our team that played 1 minute of basketball for Kansas last year, and that's Flory. 1. And that makes preseason polls the most useless thing ever, because I don't know how they even come up with it, because no one knows who you got. They know who's on your roster. You just don't know how they're going to adapt. So they're still going to do them. And we're going to say, well, Kansas is unranked. Well, we're unranked because we just didn't know what we had, and we had an injury. And so it's fine. It's for all the Nate Bukaty nerds that are worrying about stuff like that. It's the real guys like you, me and Ryan get.
First of all, don't care about the rankings at all. A couple of things to that. Think about how much Flory has grown in the short period of time that he's been there. You're talking about guys, and another name I throw out there is Ochai Agbaji, a guy that ends up, what was he? Was he player of the year or player of the tournament? I can't even remember all the accolades he got by the time, but it was from freshman to senior. We're talking about Flory. Look how far he's come just in 1 year of progress. And the other thing is, these games last year, the team was winning these games in November, and they were losing them in February and March. I would much rather see that flip around this year. You suffer some losses in November, early December, but if the team grows from that and is more poised to win when it really matters in the later parts of the season, I think all KU fans would sign up for it. Before we wrap it up, I want to bring this back home because
we're wrapping it up. I thought we were just getting started. Okay, go ahead.
I would love to,
go ahead.
but I thought you guys were on a schedule. I can keep going. I mean, you tell me. Greg
Let's
tells
get
me
back to the border. Let's get back to the border showdown.
Because we got a guy from Missouri who's going to come to the game. Now he's committed. We've got it. We've got his pledge right now with a big hefty check for Greg Gurley too. It sounds like, but. Ryan, one of the things as a Kansas City kid, when I was growing up as a KU fan, one of the reasons the rivalry meant so much to me was because when I went to school the next day and my buddies that were Missouri fans were going to let me have it like crazy if my team lost. And on the flip side, if my team won, they were going to hear it from me. If you're going to have to face the fans of the other team, it makes the result matter a little bit more to you.
Sure.
So for you, living in St. Louis, will you hear it a lot? Are you hearing it? Like, what's the atmosphere like now, especially since we're in this different era where it's not a league game anymore, but that rivalry is still around?
Listen, we talked about it. I think Missouri and Kansas is a very, very special rivalry. And yeah, I have, as like Greg does. Greg went to Kansas, but grew up in Kansas City. He has a million Missouri friends, just like I do. My wife, went to Mizzou. So, of course, I will hear it on Sunday, if the outcome doesn't go our way. So you're 100% right. In fact, I remember the other really, really famous KU Missouri game that I was not involved with, which was the last game in Allen Fieldhouse between the two before obviously the Thomas Robinson block game.
2012.
And I was at a kids soccer game watching it in the lobby, and I was so disgusted and so disappointed that we were going to lose that game that I left my family at the game and went and drove home. Well, I mean, they had a car. I didn't leave them stranded, but I was like, I'm out of here. I got to go, because it was a crowded place. And only to find out when I got home and turned on the game that I was going to watch, alone by myself, that we were pulling out this incredible comeback in the late second half. But I just remember the feeling of being around all those people going, I can't be around this. Like, I got to go home and suffer in misery because we're going to lose this most important game. And that's what you're speaking about. Like, the idea that I live in, Missouri country, Tiger country, the game means more here for sure.
I've got the painting of the last battle by John Bukaty right over here in the office, right? Because that moment. And I was the same way at halftime. My wife was like, you don't usually get this upset if we're playing poorly. And I'm like, we never get this one back, man. Like, if they win this game, they'll have it over us for forever. And we're playing so terribly. And then, of course, the rest. And you can see it from Bill, right, Greg? I mean, his reaction when the game was over, what that one meant even to him.
Sure.
Oh, man, that's a famous one where he pumps his fist. Sport coat going everywhere, and it was crazy because Missouri made the shot. They were down 1, and they made the shot. It was just about a half a second late. They didn't have urgency. I mean, everything aligned. And if you remember that year, we had a really big lead in Columbia and completely pissed down our legs. Didn't win.
Mm-hmm.
Marcus Denman went off, had a great finish, and we lost that game that we should have won. And Missouri, same thing. It was such an odd. That's what Ryan talked about earlier. Just rivalry. It just there's no. We just saw it last week in the Michigan-Ohio State, and you see Duke and Carolina. It's right up there. Now, what I will say to my Missouri friends that beat us last year, and oh my God, after we lost last year in Columbia, and I'm like, it's kind of like with my K-State friends. I go, hey, let's pump the brakes a little bit, Tiger boys. 176 to 95 is the lifetime series. Okay. That's a lot of games. 81. They got to sweep us for 40 years to get within one game. Okay. Yeah. So let's just make sure we get a baseline scoreboard here. Now, none of that matters. They lost the other night, but they were undefeated. They lost to Notre Dame, but they're really good. Dennis Gates has them going. I mean, he's recruiting. He's got another really good recruiting class coming in next year. And the other thing that people don't realize, and Ryan can comment on this as well, all these guys we played against, they're all my buddies. Just like Ryan grew up with the guys that are playing Missouri when he played. Like, you go out there and it is punch you in the mouth. It's all about trash talking in the summer at a community center in St. Charles or Kansas City. And they're all good guys. Go out for beers with them. Fine. But the fan bases take it to another level. And you even got their freaking football coach 2 years ago when we were in Columbia, breaking the code and doing what he did. It's different, but it's still the same as it always was. And I'm glad it's back going. I think a little bit of the luster got lost for whatever it was, 10, 12 years that we didn't play them. And for some reason that was our fault. I still don't understand that argument, how that was our fault, but they kind of broke up with us, but whatever. Can't argue with people that don't lose arguments.
I think that's a perfect way to wrap up the show, unless you have anything else to add, Ryan, to this conversation.
No, I just I'll thoroughly enjoy the game on Sunday. It's a great rivalry. I am thrilled that I'm a Kansas Jayhawk and love every single second of those 4 years. And I think Mizzou is really good this year, and I think we're really good, and I expect a really great game. So, again, that's what the rivalry is about, and it was kind of fun reliving some of those memories with you guys.
It's going to be a lot of fun on Sunday. Hey, Ryan, thank you so much for the time, man. We really appreciate it.
You got it, Nate.
Hey, let's talk.
Ryan, talking to you too.
You're good to go Sunday. Let's talk. Let's talk later. I better see you. We'll grab a Bloody Mary at the Drum Room, President Hotel, 10 a.m. Deal?
Deal. All right. See you guys there.
See you. And the President Hotel, awesome sponsor as well. We love the President Hotel. That's Ryan Robertson, Greg Gurley. I'm Nate Bukaty. That's going to do it for this edition of the Jayhawker Podcast, presented by Xfinity and the University of Kansas Health Systems. We'll see you next time.